You are listening to Jenny Clark on Awakened Souls.
So today on Awakened Souls podcast, I am thrilled to welcome Aly Rice, certified resilience and reinvention coach, motivational speaker, and the bold voice behind the podcast Sex, Lies, and Tacos. And this could get messy also. After navigating profound personal challenges, including non consensual imagery recording, revenge porn, sexual abuse, betrayal, and grief, and starting over from zero, she turned her raw experiences into powerful tools of transformation. Through her honest storytelling and coaching, she helps women reclaim their voices, rebuild their identities, and rise stronger unapologetically, celebrating and embracing the messy, beautiful truth of being fully alive and centered and balanced in her own truth. Get ready for a real and raw and awakening conversation with Aly Rice. Also, I would like to give a trigger warning here. This episode may contain adult themes, abuse, and trauma, which may be distressing for some listeners. So, listeners' discretion is advised. Please take care of yourself and feel free to pause or skip if needed. Resources for survivors are linked in the show notes. Shall we start?
Hi, Jenny. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. So, Aly, could we start off with, am I pronouncing your name right? I'm not sure.
You are. Yes, you are. Aly.
Aly, okay. So we would like to get to know you and a little bit about your childhood to start with.
Sure. I had a really great childhood. I was in a small family. I have an older brother, and my parents were teachers in a small community where I grew up, and I was in a really loving, supported family.
So could you tell us a little bit about how you gained strength, perhaps something in the family dynamics and your childhood was also a teaching lesson for you, and somewhere along the way you learned certain things?
I don't know that it was sort of something obviously taught to us. I think it was more led by example. My mom was a very strong woman who ended up being, she wasn't just a teacher, she ended up being a principal and a leader and a well-respected woman who was very, very strong. And I think just by watching her, I learned how to be more like her. But I don't know that I really fully embodied my resilience and my strength until after she passed away and after life sort of threw the things that it's thrown at me.
So I would suppose that would be where your resilience comes from.
I think
something
so.
in her teaching. Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
So you were also in the corporate world for about 20 years. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I was an interior designer. So when I was a little kid, I was always, if my parents couldn't find me, I was reorganizing my furniture in my bedroom, always changing my paint colors, and, they tolerated that. So I decided to be an interior designer. However, I didn't really take the expected route that interior designers typically do. And I worked in corporate design. I worked for a police service, worked for an oil and gas company, a hospital, university. I worked for large organizations as an interior designer. And it is not as glamorous and fun as one might think it is. It was a lot of beige, but it was a very fulfilling career for 20 years.
So looking back on your professional life and perhaps personal life also, would you think that there were any red flags that you ignored, that you recognize now as important?
Looking back, you're right. I think both personally and professionally, I kind of lived a life of doing what I should do, what I was supposed to do. So funny, you touched on my upbringing. It was very happy, healthy family, but there was always this sense, perhaps because they were educators and I was a small community, where there needed to be this certain level of perfection and doing the right thing. So I think in my life prior to where I'm at now, I did the things that I felt I was supposed to do. I was supposed to get a job And so while I just said that my corporate life was fulfilling, I also said it was very beige. And so I stayed in those jobs because they paid well, because they were well respected. There was a pension, there was vacation. It was very expected, very low risk. And so if I really get clear and honest with myself, I think the red flag is I never really lived my full passion and potential because I was always trying to take the safe route because that was what was expected.
You conformed, yes, you conformed and you wanted something stable, and probably that is what your parents taught you to be.
Absolutely. And my parents, they were very committed to the school board that they worked at. They worked in the same for their whole 30 plus year career was all the same school board. So I didn't come from a culture of a family culture of jumping ship, going out and doing your own thing, taking those risks. And, you know, I certainly don't fault that. I think it really worked and it continues to work for people. But if I had to pick a red flag, it was I really living my truest, best self? For the first half of my life, I'm not so sure.
You feel you weren't your authentic self. You didn't choose your...
Yeah. I don't know that I knew that then. I think I was doing what I was supposed to do, you know, and sadly, I think at that time, and maybe it's still like this now, I'm not so sure, but like it didn't matter if you loved your job. Nobody loves their job. You go, you work to live. You don't live to work. So just go, grin and bear it. Do your job and then have fun and live your life outside of working hours was sort of the mentality I was raised with. So yeah, I don't know that I believe that that's the way that it needs to be now, but that certainly was how I was raised to believe for the first half of my career, for sure.
Funny how it all works out.
Isn't it?
Yes, because uncannily, it's a lot like my life too. I was in the corporate world, but I worked in the hotel industry, and then my career path took a tangent.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, like, and you don't go after your calling. It just happens sometimes.
It just happens sometimes. And sometimes, from my personal experience, it happens because the universe nudges you and it throws some things in your way. And you can ignore those. You can ignore them. Trust me, I did. So they get louder and louder and louder until there is no other alternative but to listen and see what you're trying, what message is trying to be delivered to you.
I think of it as our guardian angels or our spirit guides, like, you know, pushing you in that direction. Maybe giving you all those challenges so that you see, okay, this is not your way.
Absolutely. And I think that our spirit guides are very gentle initially. And then they're like, hey, this one, she's not getting it. Let's make it a little louder. Yeah.
Yes, very true. So there, you mentioned it, a secret that you carried for 35 years. And if you feel free, you feel like sharing it now about that hidden truth of yours and how it influenced you as a woman you are today.
I think it was just, I don't know that it was really a hidden secret. I think it was just that I felt I needed to continue doing the things that I was supposed to do, certainly while my parents were alive. Even as an adult woman, I still, well, I don't know that they expected it or commanded it. I still felt like I needed my parents' respect and I wanted them to approve of the choices I made. And quite honestly, it wasn't until both of my parents had passed away and I had a full-blown, identity crisis due to the things that unraveled that I all of a sudden didn't feel like I needed anybody's permission anymore. And I started looking at not doing the things that I'm supposed to do, but what does Aly actually want to do? Because I don't need anybody's permission anymore. What is it I want to do? So yeah, that's a pretty big shift when all you've ever known is what you should be doing.
Could you just walk us through that short period in your life when you lost your parents and your dog and your career also took a dive?
Yeah, sure did. Everything. Yeah, so I'll try and keep it fairly quick and high level. But essentially, my mom passed away just before Christmas in 2019. Almost to the day exactly a year later, my dog died, Christmas 20. So my birthday is 2 weeks after Christmas, a week after New Year. So I always travel. I like to travel for my birthday. I do a
May I
solo
know
trip.
when is your birthday? Are you a Capricorn?
I am a Capricorn, and I think Capricorns always follow rules. And,
Yeah.
that's just part of who we are. January 8th. So literally 2 weeks after Christmas, a week after New Year's, nobody cares about your birthday. They're just, on to their resolutions and back to work.
You
What's
have a
that?
double pattern. You have a
Yes,
double pattern
Okay.
in birth chart. Yes, it's in your number as well as the Capricorn itself is set. It's ruled by Saturn.
Interesting. I'd love to know more about that. Yeah, now you get me. Anyway, so obviously we all know that COVID happened from 2020 to, I don't even know when it officially started to open up, but January 2022, I decided I got to go away from my birthday. I need a break. Things have been really heavy, losing my mom and my dog and everything. So I traveled to Mexico, and not my typical style, I ended up finding myself in a romance with one of the resort workers at the resort I was staying at. Not planned. It happened. We had a fabulous week together, and I kind of thought it would be what it would be. I'd never see the guy again. Carry on with life. I got back, from my trip and was shocked to have a whole bunch of messages from him, basically professing his love to me. Fast forward through a whole lot of things that probably, won't make a lot of sense. But I ended up in a long distance relationship with him. I saw him a few times, and we decided that we were going to plan our lives together, and he would come to Canada and live with me.
When was this? May I ask?
Yes, that was in 2022, January 2022. And so in 2022, I believe I was 43 years old.
Okay.
43 years old, no children, always wanted children. He didn't know this, but that birthday in particular was really challenging for me because I was really sad. And I was like, I feel like I've lost any opportunity to have a child, to be a mother. And this is really sad what I'm about to say. So what value do I bring if I can't, as a woman, if I can't even become a mother? Anyway, so that was a personal struggle I was carrying. And so again, fast forward, I meet this guy, things are carrying on while I'm back home, and he plants the idea of us wanting to have a family together. And I'm thinking, wow, maybe this is divine intervention. Maybe this unconventional guy that I never would have met otherwise, maybe this is divinely orchestrated. I know it sounds ridiculous, but maybe he's my opportunity to become a mom. Maybe my mom is on the other side. She's making something happen. So I went with it. And we had this long distance relationship. Obviously there was, cultural issues, a little bit of language issues, and I am 9 years older than him. So there was also some age stuff. Anyway, we were in a long distance relationship for a year, and near the end of our relationship, at points in our relationship, he left working at the resort and went to work on a cruise line. And so I knew that was going to be a long contract, but it was all for the greater good. He was going to make a bunch of money and then come to Canada, and then I wouldn't have to fully support him. Anyway, so near the end of his cruise contract, Christmas 2022, I'm trying to start to make plans for when he's coming to Canada, when I'm going to start to see him. And all of a sudden he starts to have these tragedies in his family and start making excuses for why I won't be able to see him. I end up deciding to book a trip for my birthday in January 2023. And I decided to go to Mexico because I felt like I could go anywhere I wanted, but if I needed to have this opportunity to be in Mexico for him to meet up with me if this relationship was going to continue. So I booked a trip to Cabo. He was aware of all of my travel plans, and he let me know that he would not be able to meet me in Cabo, but if I could have gone to Puerto Vallarta or something, he would be able to make arrangements to get there. So again, I'm really glazing over a lot of details, but anyway, so I break up my trip. I go to Cabo first, and then The second half of my trip is intended to be Puerto Vallarta, and he is going to meet me there. January 5th, 2023, I travel to Cabo. I land in the airport in Cabo, and I haven't really heard anything from him while I was traveling. So for whatever reason, I check his Facebook page, and I see that he has just been tagged in a post congratulating him on his wedding. And so he actually happened to be in Cabo at the same time as me, January 5th, but he was busy getting married to another Canadian woman in Cabo. Obviously, completely blindsided, didn't know what to do with that information. None of it made sense. To make matters worse, not only was he in Cabo and had just gotten married, but it turns out he had just gotten married at the hotel directly behind where I was staying, like 450 meters. So that was pretty shocking and pretty awful. And anyway, I come back to Canada and I'm pretty devastated. I've really committed to this guy for the last year. I really thought that this is who I was going to be with, and he clearly didn't have the same intentions as I did for the relationship. In February, my father is diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And from diagnosis to death was 6 weeks. So he died at Easter in 2023. And around the time my dad died, I had reached out to the woman that my ex married and let her know, that he had been cheating on both of us. And she reached out to me and ultimately ended up leaving my ex as well. And that caused my ex to really be unhappy. And that's where the revenge porn started. He lost his mind, and, it was a long distance relationship. So obviously there were images exchanged in order to keep the relationship alive. And he released intimate photos and videos of me without my consent to all social media platforms. He tagged.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the same guy that I thought I was going to have a baby with, who actually married somebody else. So he released them to all social media platforms, tagging me, my full legal name, and he also sent them to my employer and tagged my employer, who at the time was a very large business with a very large social media following, tagged there as well. Then death threats started. So my ex was creating all kinds of different fake accounts and email addresses and stuff to harass me, but to also impersonate me to harass the woman that he married that he was so desperately trying to get back. Anyway, it's a very layered story. So at that time, I'm grieving the loss of my second parent. I am now an orphan. And also trying to wrap my head around being a 40-something-year-old woman whose intimate photos and videos have just been plastered on the internet. That was a very, very, very low point for me, and actually ended up causing me to take a pretty extreme mental health break. I had to take a leave of absence for work in order to begin to heal and move through all of these things. But which thing do you start moving through first? The immediate death threats, the humiliation, or what life looks like with no support when your parents are dead. Anyway,
That's a bit so hard.
it was awful. And as you can tell and hear from my voice, it still is. And for the girl who always did what she was supposed to and wanted to make her parents proud, how humiliated would they be that she was stupid enough to find herself in this situation? So, it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing.
By sharing your story.
Yeah, but in a weird thing I'm about to say, but there were moments that I was like, thank God my parents are not here to see this, because how would I get through it? Anyway, so then fast forward. So that was really all between April and November 2023. So all of 2023 was a write-off. It was pretty awful. January 2024, 2 days after my 5th birthday, I got laid off from my job. And so, you know,
Uh,
that was awful. However, I also really had secretly been manifesting it because at the time my life was going through all kinds of turmoil. So was my company. And they were doing,
on what
sorry?
ground? On what grounds did they lay you off?
Oh, well, my whole company was going through mass layoffs. So
Okay.
even while I was off on mental health leave, I was like, God, please, like, I know I'm not happy here. There were a whole bunch of things that had happened prior to all of this that I wasn't happy there. I didn't feel respected or appreciated. And so I was just like, help me find a way out of this. And so, you know, it's devastating that it happened 2 days after my birthday, 45th at that. But really, I had asked for it. I had not only asked the universe for it, but, you know, when I returned to work after my leave, I had said to my manager at the time, if you have to make a difficult decision for somebody on this team, please let it be me. I'm going to be okay. You know, some other people on the team are younger. They wouldn't be okay. And so I did get what I asked for, but it was still the icing on the cake of all of this stuff.
So this was the hardest moment that broke you. This was the last breath of this.
Yeah. It was definitely the icing on the cake.
So when your world imploded and through this great betrayal and everything all at once, what was your lowest point and how did you get through it the next day and the next day and the next day?
Honestly, well, I had several lowest points. It's all about what you know at the time, right? So initially the lowest point was my boyfriend married someone else and I didn't see how I was going to get through that. And the reason I got through that, because I did contemplate, it's going to sound ridiculous, over some loser guy, but I did contemplate ending my life because I was like, that was the last chance I had to be a mom. But what got me through that was my dad. My dad needs me. My dad's been really sad since he lost my mom. I got to be here for him. And then, you know, obviously my dad dies. I think the next lowest point was the revenge porn. Like, what do you do? Nobody is equipped to deal with this. Like, how humiliating.
What about the woman who married? Did she support you? Did she know all this? And that
Yes.
did she come
Yes.
out?
Thankfully, the woman that he married, so I actually sent her a letter in the mail and she believed me and we got through this together because there's a lot of stuff that he ended up doing in my name to her and then ultimately was just doing to her as well. She helped me get through it. We helped each other get through it because nobody could understand what we were going through. But, you know, as I'm stepping back right now, so it's literally the 3-year anniversary of all the things that happened. So
Yes.
April 6th is my dad's 3-year anniversary from the day that he died.
Yes.
And so standing where I am right now today, what is my lowest point? My lowest point was losing my dad because that was the day that I no longer had parents. So the other stuff, that really sucked for sure.
I'm sorry. He was your friend.
Well, my mom really was, but it was like as soon as you don't have either of them, that's hard. So that, I guess, would be my lowest point was, now what?
So you said that you'd ignored red flags and silenced your intuition. Looking back, what were those red flags? Maybe some of our viewers and listeners would.
Sure.
Where
Where do we start? Where do we start? Because red flags are very, very obvious to people when they're not in the situation. And sometimes they're obvious to you when you're in them, but like you want to ignore them because you want to believe the best in a person.
Yes.
Like the first red flag was, well, red flag in myself was I wasn't even interested in this guy, but he was very manipulative and persuasive to get me to entertain having a conversation with him, let alone a whole relationship. So I really wish that I had listened to my gut and immediately and not even entertained a conversation with him, let alone, you know, going to his place and dating him and all of those things. The next red flags, you know, there was some financial stuff that happened, you know, constantly asking me for things. His requests started small and he was actually quite brilliant to start small. And I think this is probably what most do. It's like, oh, my favorite candy is in Canada and I can't access it. Would you bring it next time you come? And then it became a pair of $250 running shoes. And then it became an Apple Watch, and then it became a computer. I'll pay you back. I wish I'd paid attention to how my body reacted in each and every one of those asks. But I was trying to believe that he had the same intentions as me and just ignore my body's reaction to it and just do the things that I thought would make him happy and make our relationship stronger. There were a series of like things that didn't make sense near the end of the cruise contract, like his grandfather suddenly dying and then his grandma dying a few weeks later, and his reaction and not wanting to talk about any of it and having very little details around it raised flags for me. I wish that I had just accepted those red flags as enough information to tell me he wasn't being honest, but not me. I'm not a quitter. I'm gonna keep going through to see how many more red flags I can catch. So I think the one thing that I've really learned through this whole thing is that my body knew. My body knew the first introduction to him, and I needed to start listening to my intuition. And I'll tell you now, like the moment something feels off for me in my body, I don't question it. I just trust it.
That's a good thing. You start trusting your intuition. You start trusting your gut feeling.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, I was a slow learner.
Yes, we usually are, because women usually be ruled by the heart. So, and initially, I think am I right? Is he a narcissist?
Well, I'm not qualified to make that diagnosis, but yeah, I would.
Did it start off with love bombing and
yes. That's a great point. That's a really great point. Yeah, that's a huge red flag. But it's, love bombing is such an interesting thing because it wasn't always a thing, right? This is a relatively new thing for us. And so it felt good. I landed in Canada after a week with him and he's telling me how great I am. And it just felt genuine. Looking back now, yeah, it was ridiculous. It was a lot of love bombing.
Yes, it gets intense right away, and it's not a slow burn. It's like suddenly, it's like
fast and furious, and like and trying to lock me down into having a baby and do all of these things. And so, I guess I was willing to accept that level of speed because, I lived on the west side of Canada and he was on, I think, the east side of Mexico, like really far. Like how logistically can we make this happen? My biological clock has almost run out of batteries. So like I don't have a lot of time. So I was sort of willing to accept the speed and thinking, well, this is the way it's supposed to be. But, since this time, as you've said, like I've got a podcast and I coach women. And so I've had a lot of conversations about relationships and relationships that don't go the way that we think they're going to go. And the one common denominator is the love bombing and the speed at which things go. It's so intense. And like, we might think that at the time, but we're like, oh, I love them and I feel these things. I'm being genuine. So I trust they are too. And what is abundantly clear.
Yes, and they tell you all the things that you want to hear. And then you don't listen to the things that they're also telling you because, between the lines, and you don't hear that. You only hear what you want to hear.
Well, and it has become abundantly clear that not everybody has the same intentions that we do. And so we're honest. We expect they're going to be honest, but that is not always true. So yeah.
So you've been very open also about a very important subject, suicide ideation. So can you tell our listeners what kept you here and kept you moving and what shifted your perspective from those dark thoughts to a living life to the fullest and teaching women how to survive?
Well, I've had several of those thoughts throughout this journey. And so like I said, the first one was when I found out he married someone else. And the piece that kept me together was my dad. And like, I just couldn't do that to him. Right. And so I got through that hurdle, and then like the revenge porn, those thoughts appeared again. But I think I think I was just so dark and so heavy. And this is going to sound ridiculous. I don't even know that I had the energy to go through with ending my life at that time. And then I think I just became so pissed off that this happened, and how how dare he do this to me? And I think it was my anger and then it started happening, things started happening to the woman he married, and he was pretending it was me. And I was like, no, I channeled my mother in that moment. I had to have. And it was like, nah, you are not the reason that I'm not going to be here anymore. You're the reason that I'm going to stand up and start speaking and stop you. And I think when I just shifted it to, he doesn't get to win. Who is he? He's some loser that took advantage of women. He doesn't get to determine that this is the end of the road for me. So I don't know. I don't think it was a conscious moment. I don't know. But I'll tell you, that fire still lives in me. And it's like, no, you don't get to do this.
Yes, absolutely. Was there one decision that brought you back from the brink and you felt like, yes, I'm back. Yeah, baby, I'm back.
Yeah, I do. I think, but I don't think it was more about me. I think it was when so the woman he married's name is Megan, and she is significantly younger than me, like 18 years younger than me. And when he started like harassing her, and he ultimately released her intimate photos and videos as well on social media, but did it in an account pretending to be me. I think that was the defining moment. It was like, no. Like you can do what you want to do to me, but how dare you do it to somebody else? And I mean, how ridiculous that I could stand up stronger and louder and harder for somebody else than I could myself. But yeah.
For all you know, you actually protected her.
There's been a lot of conversations where she has said thank you. She said, God, can you imagine if I had still been with him? Can you imagine what married life would have been?
Her a lot of heartache and you saved her a lot of years. Best years.
Yeah. And I'll tell you one thing, because there are several women, and I've had the opportunity to speak to many of them. I will tell you one thing. He has great taste in women. All of us are very strong, independent women. And so it is really mysterious that he was able to. Yeah. Yeah.
He must be a proper scammer.
Master manipulator. Yeah. So
Sociopath.
Well, he has to be, just the way that it all carried out and how extreme it got anyway, so my goal in this whole thing, because I tell you, I never would have imagined that, one, I would have been in this situation, two, I would have spoken about it. It's the kind of thing that most people would just take to their grave, So I don't know what happened to me other than I just got mad, but
sometimes it's like a switch goes, I mean, you like light bulb moment, and
and I think it was I think that I ended up having to be the one in this situation. This was the universe nudging certain things, and it was like, hey, she's not getting that her life isn't fulfilling for her. She's not getting that she needs to make a change. You know what will get her? Let's make it so loud she can't miss this message. And I choose to believe that it had to happen to me because I was the one that would stand up and stop him, and I would start spreading this word, and in hopes of removing some shame around these relationships that everybody can see the red flags but the people in it, the shame around being in your 40s or any age, but being a victim of revenge porn, the shame around every part of my story. It happened. I've learned from it. I've grown. And, isn't that what life is about?
Yes, but Aly, it is not your shame. It is his shame.
Yeah.
So from that moment of becoming completely shattered and your life went to pieces, and then you went on to create Survival to Thrival Guide. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So in my shatter, I was like, what's the point of this? What am I supposed to do? And then I started to realize, like I just said, maybe this happened to me because there's a bigger reason, a bigger purpose. And so I started to really get intentional about my healing. I started taking some coaching courses and trying to figure out what the point was. And maybe it is just to help people to navigate through these things. So in the early days of this is only 3 years old, but like in the very early days, I found it helpful to create that guide. It's called the Survival to Thrival. And it basically was just some of the tips that I had when I was in my darkest moments, when I didn't know what tomorrow looked like, let alone the next 6 months, the next year. And so one of the biggest takeaways from that time and is in the guide is focusing on what's one small thing I can do today, right now, that's small enough to get done, but big enough to matter. And some days for me, that was literally just having a shower. Some days for me, that was taking my dog for a walk. But it eventually became easier for me to get through the days. And it became, I'm going to tell my story. And it became, I'm going to do a podcast. Well, how the heck do I do that? They don't teach you that in interior design school. So, it just became bigger and bigger. And I started to feel better about myself, these little things that I would accomplish each day. And so that's what that guide is about, is just, trying to give people a few tangible tools that might be able to help them to begin to pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and become their next best version of themselves.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask you about the imposter syndrome that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And what was it for you? And how do you help your clients?
Well, yes. So I think the thing that I've learned, certainly with me and my coaching journey, is I can help people because I am people. So the imposter syndrome thing made sense for me because I was feeling it. I had been feeling it my whole career, if I'm completely honest. And for people who don't know what imposter syndrome is, it's like you're always doubting your ability to do something. You're always thinking, I'm just holding on to this job by a thread. One day people are going to realize I don't know what I'm doing. Well, my 20-year design career, people would say to me, "Oh, Aly, don't worry. We know you're the expert. You've got this." On the inside, I'm thinking, I'm not the expert. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just winging it. Obviously, I wasn't winging it, but it's this like mix of like confidence, a lack of confidence, and like the thoughts that play in our head that stop us from doing things. And so the imposter syndrome certification was really important for me to get because I was struggling with it myself. And the truth is, a lot of people struggle with it, more so women than men, but that's, it's not 100% true. And it's just about recognizing that sometimes fear gets in our way and tells us we can't do things, but we don't have to believe that. And the best way to get better at something is by practice. So putting ourselves in these uncomfortable situations. And so maybe it didn't go to plan. Well, you start to look back and think, okay, but what did go well? What did I learn? Yeah. And so it is a big thing that I see with the women that I have conversations with. It's like, we want to do all these things, but imposter syndrome holds us back. And so it's this gentle guidance of, what if we just try one small thing? We did that. It was uncomfortable. It was weird, but we learned something. What if we try it again, but like add one more thing? It's these like baby building blocks. And we start to realize everything is uncomfortable because we're learning, we're growing, we're stretching. But eventually, what used to be uncomfortable and we thought we couldn't do, we do without even giving thought. And so it's about teaching people to have the courage to try something new. As we get older, we're not as comfortable at trying new things and learning just for the sake of learning. That's really what we do when we're children, right? And then all of a sudden, like, things shift when we're adults that, well, for me, where the first time I do something, I have to be perfect. If I'm not perfect, I'm not doing it. Well, that's not realistic.
No, it isn't.
No.
Not even Google is perfect.
No.
So, could you tell us a little bit about your first podcast?
Yes.
Sex, Life, and Tacos, and why
Yes.
that, and how it was about those personal stories that you shared.
Yes. So a little bit of an update that I haven't even released. So here, you get it. I've shifted things. So I'm just going to have sex, lies, and tacos. So I had, this could get messy for a little bit, but I'm just transitioning to just sticking to sex, lies, and tacos. So first of all, the name, where did it come from? That's a great question. Well, everything was going on in my life. I really wasn't sleeping through the night. And lots of people had said to me, like, Aly, this is a crazy story. It needs to be on Netflix. You got to write a book. You got to do something. And so I knew I was going to tell my story. I didn't know how, what, when, whatever. I woke up in the middle of the night one night and I just sex, lies, and tacos. That's it. This is what the name is, whatever it is, whether it's my Netflix deal, whether it's whatever. And so that was like in the summer of 2023. And so I sort of sat with that. I didn't know what it was going to look like. And then in the fall, I started thinking, I just need to tell my story. I just need to get it out there. I don't care if anybody listens, but for my healing, I just need to get it out there. So I decided Sex, Lies, and Tacos, would be kind of a fun, memorable name for this podcast. So season 1 is all about my story. It's, there are moments where, I'm making light of things because at that point it was very, very early. I'm still going through it. So very raw in my journey. And I was using humor as a coping mechanism. There's some graphic details in there. There are some moments where it's really emotional, certainly when I talk about the part in my story where my dad is dying. But then it evolved and I had initially I just thought this is just going to be my story and done. But then I started having people reach out to me saying how much my story moved them, how much they could identify with certain parts of my story, how much they appreciated my way of sharing this information. And so people started asking, like, when's season 2 coming? And I thought, well, God, I'm not going to put myself through another situation like this just for another season. So I decided to open it up to other people's stories because I think we all know somebody who's been through something pretty crazy. And in my personal experience, the best way to start to work through it is to talk about it and to let other people know that who maybe are going through something similar but feeling alone, that they're not alone. So season 2 is a collection of other people's stories, relationship focused on things they've been through. And season 3, which is coming out actually in a couple of weeks on my dad's 3-year death anniversary, April 6th, it will be a collection of not, just relationship stuff, but it's sort of a merging of This Could Get Messy and Sex, Lies, and Tacos because life is really messy. And the truth about my story, it started with all that gross stuff with the revenge porn and the betrayal. But that's not what this story is about. This story is about grief. It's about what life looks like when you lose your parents. It's about identity loss. Who am I now if I'm not interior designer for X and X company? Who am I if I'm not these things? And so my intention for season 3 is for it to be, a really safe people to share their stories. It doesn't matter what the topic is. As long as the story is something that they have, didn't expect happening or they worked through or they're in the middle of working it, it's the intention is for them to heal or to help somebody else heal. That's my only goal for Sex, Lies, and Tacos moving forward.
So it must have been a blessing to have your listeners respond to you and also a surprise.
Talk about a surprise. Yeah, like people other than my immediate friends listened. Like it's wild to me the hundreds of messages that I've gotten that just are showering me with love and support. And, there's obviously some people that are not so nice and telling me that I'm stupid. How did you ignore those red flags? Why would you let yourself in that situation? You're not a victim. All of those things. Right. That's not helpful. This is why people don't talk about things because they're afraid of the outside judgment of people. And so my bigger mission is to share that people end up in situations that, they never thought they'd end up in. It doesn't mean that they're stupid. It just means that they made a bad decision and they've learned from it. And so my goal is to try and take some of the stigma away from that. And yeah, I certainly didn't ever intend to air my dirty laundry in a public way.
But it
Here
has
we are.
helped so many women. Did you notice any
Yeah.
patterns with the women you've coached? Common patterns, the things that they think are just them, but they're actually very common amongst trauma survivors.
For sure. Shame, guilt, blaming themselves. For sure. That's really common. When it's relationship based, like I said, I find that it's when the love bombing happens. So it tends to be like they can't believe they've manifested this amazing guy. He knows all these things that I want without even telling me. And then when something shifts, it's like we're constantly trying to chase what we had. We don't understand why the energy went from so loving to all of a sudden cold and discarding us. And so the women that I have had the pleasure of experiencing time together with, we all tend to be similar types of people, and we are very honest and we love hard and we want to make something work. And so we tend to take the blame for why something isn't working or try to make sense of why it's not working. But the pattern tends to be, it's not actually something that we are doing. It's these people tend to spot us and they take advantage of our kindness and our honesty and our commitment and use it to their advantage. The other common thing is the imposter syndrome thing, is we are so incredibly hard on ourselves, and we hold ourselves back, and we don't chase after the things we want. We worry about everybody else, and we save what's left for us. Even women who don't have children, like we do things for other people and then, not for us. But sorry? Yeah, absolutely. It's like, the other thing that's glaringly obvious is how many people say to themselves, I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow. I'm going to the gym tomorrow. And then when the gym comes, they don't go. But if you asked me to do something tomorrow for you, it has no benefit to me, but you say, hey, could you do whatever for me? We wouldn't even consider not fulfilling that commitment to you. Why is it so easy for us to hold commitments to other people? And I say us as women, because that's really who I work with and obviously who I am. So men maybe do the same thing, but I think it's predominantly women. Why do we hold our commitments to other people at let ourselves off the hook? We should be focusing on our commitments to ourselves first and foremost, and then we can show up for other people.
So you help women reclaim their voice and rebuild their identities. Can you share any powerful story of a client's transformation story, without names, of course, that still moves you?
Well, I can think of somebody in particular. The first time that we had a session, she was actively going through some stuff and very broken, very blaming herself, very negative, very low. And obviously I could totally relate to that. But we've been working together for about 4 months, I would say, every 2 weeks meeting. And she really dug in and started doing the work and focusing on, what's one small thing we can work on today that's going to help get us going in the right direction, from like getting out of bed to like, what is it you really want? Like me, are you happy in your career? Or are you just doing what you've always done because change is scary? And so I saw a huge transformation with her from being, very low and discouraged to getting excited by figuring out a few options for things that she might like to explore in a career path. So we're not completely finished yet, but she's like looking at a couple different options and researching. Whereas when we first started, she's like, I don't know what I like to do for fun. What's that? I know I don't want to do this anymore, but I don't know what kind of job I could do. And so I think it's just this like walking along beside them as somebody who's been there and reassuring them that we're not going to get the answers overnight. It's not a straight path, but we will eventually, as long as we keep showing up for ourselves, start to make sense of where we want to go. So it's pretty rewarding and really not something I ever expected to be a part of. But I think the universe wanted to course correct me because designing beige boardrooms wasn't really what I was meant to do.
I had a feeling about this word beige that you always use.
Well, you know,
So does
I
it
know
have
because literally my whole 20 years, it was like literally like off-white furniture and walls and so no hate to neutrals, none. They serve a purpose. And in a corporate world, like, of course, you're not going to buy like vibrant colored furniture because that's expensive and it dates. But I think that there is a time and a place to have vibrant colors. And I live my life that way. And so I dress that way. I try to have a personality that's vibrant. And so I guess my goal in continually bringing up the beige thing is, for me, beige is like safe and status quo. And I think it works. It works. But is life fulfilling when we're just safe and status quo?
Yeah.
Or if we throw a little bit of hot pink at it, does it give us a little bit of energy or whatever that color is? And so, once I started throwing some vibrancy into my life because I had no other choice, really things changed. And I want people, I know it's not so easy to just totally change your life. I fully understand that. But like, is there some area of your life that you can bring some vibrancy into and maybe not choose the safe route and take a risk here or there?
You know what, Aly? You've given me ideas with that word beige, not just beige. I'm going to do something about this.
Okay. You'll have to let me know. Let me know what you do.
Yeah.
Again, neutrals are great. There is something to be said for being safe in life. Of course, we have to. But we can also sprinkle a little bit of color in every once in a while.
Yes, so not just beige. Not just beige.
Yeah. Not just beige.
So if you could offer one mantra to all the women ready to transform themselves and transition themselves from empowering themselves and becoming their authentic, what would that mantra be?
Well, funny you should ask, because one thing that helped me is a mantra that I had tattooed down my spine. And it's let it hurt, let it bleed, let it heal, and let it go. And so I don't know who said that first. I found it on Pinterest, but it's the process. Yeah, let it hurt and let it bleed for as long as it needs to.
Let it heal
and
let it go.
Let it go.
So, I love it.
And I think that's the cycle of it all. I mean, any little thing. It doesn't have to be a big, massive life implosion, but like any little thing that hurts, let it. And then work through it.
I love it. Actually, yes, I'm feeling so good about this. Just talking to you and listening to your story, and it's so uplifting and inspiring.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot.
I was actually feeling a little down before the interview, and now I'm feeling.
Well, that's because it's the middle of the night for you.
No, just.
But see, that's my goal. That's the point of all of it, right? Is like, we all have down moments. I have a lot of them. But it's little conversations like this, or, sharing a podcast episode. If it can lift somebody just a little bit, it's all worth it.
So what's your next taco go-to order?
My taco. Well, I don't eat a lot of tacos. I say that I love tacos, but I do have a bit of a bad taste in my mouth. Still, 3 years later. I've been exploring other cuisines, to be completely honest.
How about Indian?
I love Indian food. I love butter. I mean, I don't know if you know this about me, but I have the palate of a toddler. So I'm very picky, but I love samosas. I love butter chicken. I love naan bread.
Indian men are very committed.
Okay. That's what you meant. Hey, you never know. You never
Yeah,
know.
crossed.
Yeah,
Now that you're talking to me, you never know.
you never know.
So, what is next for you? Any exciting projects? New seasons of the podcast? You said the third season.
Yeah, so season 3 is kicking off in a couple weeks, April 6th. And it's season 3 because it's year 3 of all of this stuff. So that's exciting. I'm always looking for people to want to be on the podcast to share their story. I'm really content in life. I'm just taking things day by day and starting to really just do things with intention, not because I have to, because I want to. Sex, Lies, and Tacos was really only ever for me to get my story out. It was never intended to be more than one season. And then as I transitioned in my healing and really got more into coaching, I thought, I've been getting some really great feedback on podcasting. While I'm not a podcast professional, some people like listening to me talk, which is shocking to me. So I thought, why not start another one, but really focus on coaching and helping people get through things. And much like Sex, Lies, and Tacos came to me in the middle of the night, This Could Get Messy came to me in the middle of the night too, because I thought, when you bite into a taco, it gets pretty messy, right?
Yeah.
But the stuff that falls on your plate is still really delicious. And so, not like, it's so weird that I'm like connected to this taco theme, but it was just sort of playing on that like life really is messy. We can get hit by a curveball at any moment, and that curveball could be, your dog dying, your friend getting sick and you not seeing it, you losing your job. It could be anything, because we are dodging curveballs every day. And so the intention for that was really just to create this space, again, to remove any kind of shame around what people were going through, and to create a place to share and to heal and to feel support. The truth is that podcast was really challenging for me, because my imposter syndrome, I was like, who am I to get on there and start coaching people on a platform? And so I really struggled with it, and it was harder for me to show up there. Certainly, I couldn't show up there in my authentic self like I am right now, just talking to you. I felt like it had to be perfect and had to be scripted. And so it didn't feel right. And so I was just away for the month of January in Bali and Thailand, having a really spiritual healing trip. And in that time, I realized it's okay to let it go. People are really asking about Sex, Lies, and Tacos, and it's really hitting people, and they want more. It's okay to just focus on that. And so it just felt cleaner to end This Could Get Messy, kick season 3 off with, addressing that, but allowing season 3 to evolve with wherever it needs to evolve. So that's where we're at.
So, in conclusion, if there's somebody listening to you who feels like their life is falling apart and it's too late to rebuild, maybe they are in their middle age, and they feel like it's like their twilight years, what would your advice be for them?
I get it. First of all, I would say I get it. I understand. And your journey is not the same as mine, but I get it. I lost my job at 45. That's kind of middle life, right? I understand, and it's not easy and it's not fast, but it is worth showing up for yourself. It is worth believing in yourself. You can get through this. You just need to take the time to heal and to start figuring out what it is you want to do next. You don't have to stay stuck where you're at. I mean, there are little movements you can make to work towards a bigger goal where, you can't leave your job today, but maybe in a year you've taken a bunch of little steps and things have changed and you can leave that job. So I would just say, try not to let your age or your circumstances limit you, because that's what held me stuck for a really long time. And look how the universe nudged me to move forward. Yeah.
So, Aly, I want to thank you for coming on to our podcast. And if
Thank you so much for having me.
to share with us? Anything you would like to say to our listeners?
I would just like to say it's such an honor to have had the opportunity to speak with you and to speak to your listeners, and would welcome anybody to reach out to me if they need anything. Just because they reach out doesn't mean I'm going to try and lock them into coaching. It's not about that. That's not what I'm about. It's about genuine connection with people and wanting people to feel less alone, because there were many times in my journey where I felt very alone and very ashamed, and it's a dark place, and I don't want that for people.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for all the work you're putting in. I find you so inspiring, and the work, your advocacy for women, everything you've been through, in spite of the betrayal, the grief, and your loss. You've taken your activism to a whole new level, and you've done so much for women. You empowered them. I hope you continue to do so and share your love and your experiences with survivors.
Thank
and
you so
help them
much.
be the most authentic self. Self-love is the most important thing.
That's
For
right.
women, and that's what you've been making women feel like, and I can sense that. I can see that. So that's
Thank
amazing.
you so much. You have no idea how much that means to me. And anytime somebody reaches out to me, it shocks me that people have heard my story, and I really appreciate it, honestly.
So thank you, Aly. Namaste.
Thank you.
And God bless you.
You are listening to Jenny Clark on Awakened Souls.
You are listening to Jenny Clark at Awakened Souls on Spotify or wherever you're listening to our podcast. Every week we will bring you stories, conspiracy theories, and pearls of spiritual wisdom. We will talk about everything from ghosts and hauntings, shamanic teachings and crystal healings, angels and demons to tarot in the occult. If there is anything you want to share or want us to cover, DM us on Awakened Souls at Anchor FM or email us at teamawakendsouls@gmail.com. Namaste.